Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Mockingbird Society's speaker series, Through the Lens of Lived Experience. We are so glad to be here with you and your families this evening. I will now hand it over to our board vice president, Nawish Tunmai Nightgun, for the land acknowledgement.
Thank you. Okay, Nestunitane ko Nawashtamai. My name is Nawashtamai Nightgun. I am Yakima and Blackfeet. I want to thank you all for coming. I'd like to honor the earth that we walk on today, that we are grateful to the earth for giving us air, water, and food, and also to honor the Coast Salish people who are the original caretakers of this land. And I want to honor all of the ancestors who were brought here on forced labor. May we be mindful of Mother Earth and honor the land wherever we go. Thank you.
Thank you, Nawish Tunmai. Welcome to the first installment of Through the Lens of Lived Experience. My name is Esther Taylor, and I am a leadership team member for the Tacoma Mockingbird Society chapter. I'm currently in my fourth year at Walla Walla University, studying strategic communication with a strong drive and passion to change the foster care system and end youth homelessness. I'm so glad to be a part of the Mockingbird Society family, in which we all can connect with one another through our shared experiences. We all share a common goal of transforming the system as a team, and we're making that happen. Thank you to all of our supporters for their commitment and making this vision a reality. I'd like to take a moment to thank our generous sponsors. Thank you to our champion sponsor, the Schultz Family Foundation. Thanks to their generosity, all gifts made tonight over $250 will be matched dollar for dollar. Thank you to our advocates, Kaiser Permanente, and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And thank you to the Rakes Foundation, Casey Family Programs, Seattle Children's, and the Seattle Mariners for their support. Thank you for making tonight possible. Now, before I turn it over to tonight's speakers, I'd especially like to thank each and every one of you for joining us. Our success is also not possible without the strong support and partnership from the community, which is each and every one of you. This is Mockingbird's 20th year, and we have so much to be proud of. Together, we have changed the system to better serve young people and families. And together, we have the power to do so much more. So thank you for joining us tonight and in the many years to come. We are so honored to have you with us in celebration of the Mockingbird Society 20 years of impact. I'm so excited to introduce tonight's speakers, Jim Theofelis and Deonate Cruz. Jim has been serving the children, youth, and families of Washington State for over 40 years. In 2000, Jim founded the Mockingbird Society with just 3 youth advocates, knowing that the voices of young people with lived experience held the power to transform systems and lives. We're thrilled to have him join us tonight, along with Mockingbird alumni, Deonate Cruz. Deonate is a dedicated advocate and service provider for youth and young adults experiencing homelessness and foster care. Deonate was a Mockingbird Network representative and was in one of the first Mockingbird families. Deonate brings a unique perspective on all of Mockingbird's programming. We'll have a Q&A with Deonate and Jim after the conversation, so please put your questions in the chat. I'm looking forward to hearing Jim and Deonate's take on Mockingbird's history and how we have grown to serve hundreds and thousands of people, of young people in particular, and families around the world. Let's see what they have to say.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jim Theofelis, and I'm thrilled to be here with you all to celebrate 20 years of remarkable impact from the Mockingbird Society. And I just want to begin by thanking you all at home for joining us and for all of your support over the years. And in particular, I want to shout out to all the current and ex-staff and board members, volunteers, donors, and of course, the young people themselves who brought forth the courage and the leadership to bring us where we are here today. So you're all a big part of this, and I thank you. And I'm thrilled to be here with Deonate Cruz, Deonate, how you doing? And do you remember how we met actually?
You know, I remember that we met in November 2010 when I first started at the Mockingbird Society. But a very interesting fact that a lot of people don't know is that our paths were intertwined long before 2010. And so we began to talk and dialogue about the Mockingbird family motto and my grandparents. And you had let me know that my grandparents were one of the first Constellation parents. And that's when it all kind of came together and made sense for me.
I think one of the things I love about community, and I think Mockingbird Society exemplifies what it means to be part of community, is it's not uncommon in community to know someone's people or their relative before you actually know them, and that's how you make the connection. So it really warmed my heart for you to be part of the Mockingbird family program and not even know that, because that was what my hope and vision was all along, is that we could transform this system so that children and adolescents actually felt like they were being raised by family and community rather than by a system. So the thought that you were part of this and getting the love of Carol, who you now refer to as grandma, and I love the stories. I'll say, so how's your grandma? How's Carol? Oh, I got to go there this Sunday for dinner. So it proves you're still part of that, which is what we want out of the Mockingbird Family Program, is those lifelong, enduring relationships.
When I first came to the Mockingbird family model, I'd gone through a couple social workers. I'd also gone through a couple placements in foster care, more than 30 plus relocations within foster care to be exact, before my 14th birthday. And I remember the social worker being like, come on, we got this placement. It's a temporary placement. And then I walk in the door and I see kids running around and I'm like, this is different. And then somebody greeted me at the door and they were like, hey, and that was my grandma. That was the first time I ever met my grandma. And when you've been through 30 plus relocations within foster care, you begin to kind of identify what environments are different, what's authentic. But from the moment that I entered that house, I really felt at home. The Mockingbird family model really has this deep connection that it builds with the youth and young adults, but also, with the community. It gives us a sense of family. And I have to say, that is my family. I aged out at 19 from that. But now we're talking 10 years later, and every weekend I still go to grandma's house. Every weekend I still check in with grandma and grandpa. And it really speaks to the familiar connection that we have, that's built within the Mockingbird family model. When we talk about forever homes, when we talk about chosen family, that was my forever home. That is my chosen family.
That's what this system on a macro level needs to focus on. Systems don't change lives. Programs don't change lives. Relationships change lives. And that's what Mockingbird Family was all about from the beginning.
When I started at the Mockingbird Society in 2010, I was a network representative. And a network representative's job is to do the bulk of the advocacy work within the youth programs. But really what it is telling the story of our lived experience within foster care. Today, it feels a little intuitive, right? And so when we think about, these things and we think about kind of like what's the best way to solve these, we gotta kind of ask ourselves, who knows best? Those people know best. They have their experience. They can tell you best about it. But, when I was growing up in foster care, especially before my 14th birthday, that really wasn't the case. And so for me, that's really the impact that it's had on me. It's given me a sense of self. It's given me a sense of self-worth. It's allowed me to tell my story. Growing up in the system, I didn't acknowledge for the longest time, the trauma that I experienced going through the system. And so when we think about that and we think about the young people, we often use this word of resiliency. You went through this system, but that's okay now because you're resilient, right? And a friend of mine, and actually one of our former staff, at the Mockingbird Society had said something to me recently, that no young person should ever have to find out how strong that they can be. And that's what I think of when I think of the Mockingbird Society and what it means to advocate. We're giving people an opportunity to heal that trauma. But also one of those Jimisms that you say is that we're doing this, not necessarily for us, because when I was advocating, I wasn't in foster care anymore. I had aged out of foster care. And so we're doing this, like you often say, for that 5-year-old who doesn't even know that they're going to be in foster care. We're paving a way so young people never have to actually figure out how strong they have to be able to survive a traumatic experience. And for me, that's where the power is. And when I think about, any of my younger siblings who might be in foster care, anybody extended family who I might not even know of, it's important for me to be able to speak up and change a system that impacts so many young people, especially those who are near and dear to me.
I'm so glad you talked about the healing part of that, and it warms my heart that you feel that, because I often said that before I started Mockingbird, I was a counselor and a therapist, but I often said I could sit there for 10 hours a week with a young person and not have the same impact of them healing and feeling a meaningful part of community, a meaningful member of the table of community, going down to Olympia, meeting a legislator, getting that legislator to buy into the idea and say, yes, I'll sponsor that. Or attend the summit or youth advocacy day and say, wow, I want to help these young people. And then watch that idea go through the committee hearings, go through all of the different votes, ultimately being at the governor's office when he's signing or she's signing a bill that came from the idea of young people and just how young people would sit up tall knowing that they were involved in something meaningful. So I think it was a creative strategy that really brought young people into a leadership role. And like I say, one of the things I used to say back then a lot is, at Mockingbird, you are a leader to help us figure out how to get ready for that 5-year-old child. And so we wanted to reframe, we wanted to change the mindset for young people themselves, but quite frankly, also for adults, for decision makers. We wanted to shift the mindset from those kids to our kids. And then, of course, all of the legislative successes that we've had and that they continue to have, going back to, you mentioned it, extended foster care, which started as foster care to 21. That was really our first major piece of legislation. Both the foster care to 21 and the extended foster care program started from young people's ideas at the Mockingbird Society. And I just think that's a remarkable thing, that this thing is nationwide now. Almost all states have opted in. And again, it started in our little office at the Mockingbird Society. The last thing I just want to say about that is we've had research, empirical research conducted on both foster care to 21 and on extended foster care. And the results are just so profound. The thing I love is for every $1 invested, it gets $5 back for the young person. So, and that's in life earnings. That's having, connected to the other findings, which are they reduce early parenting, they reduce their criminal behavior, both at the same rate as their peers in college and out in the world. If you take care of young people, if you give them the basic needs and so they can focus on thriving rather than surviving, the outcomes are going to be better.
Being in foster care to 20 when the pilot program was, it had a huge impact on me. I remember grandma saying, no, you deserve this opportunity as well. You deserve to have a safe place to stay. When we talk about Obama knows, my grandma knew what was good for us, oftentimes when we didn't even know what was good for us. She saw the goodness in us long before we saw the goodness in ourselves. She saw the potential in us and she wanted us to realize that. And so for me, it really started with that. It was an opportunity for me. I had a safe place to stay. I had a prolonged connection with the people who loved me and people who I loved, the family that I chose. But I also had an opportunity to go to school, which was something that many of my peers didn't have because they didn't have that stability. I think one of the interesting things about extended foster care is that you can't really understand the impact that it has on young people unless you understand the experiences that young people have in foster care.
Because when Mockingbird, if you recall, when we were doing this work, you literally were kicked out of the system at either age 18 or when you secured your high school diploma /GED, whichever came second.
you had 10-year-olds in foster care who understood that very well. And so you had people 8 years before they were ready to age out of foster care already thinking about, what is my 18th birthday gonna look like? Many people, I don't know if they understand that connection. At one point, foster care was cited as being the leading reason why youth and young adults become homeless at the age of 18.
Like we had a system that trained kids to underachieve, because if they achieved, the reward was to become homeless.
For many of us, there's a lack of stability when we're growing up in the system, a lack of foundational skills being taught, a lack of planning, but also, when we talk about at 18, really those young people becoming homeless on their 18th birthday, that's real. For many of us, there was such a disconnect between our families who we were taken from and the way that we were taken from our families, that those relationships aren't there. And without that planning and that foundation, many of us have ended up homeless. And so the system has taught us, to be honest, many skills on how to survive in a very complex setting. And for some of us, those skills are also transferable to the streets.
I often say this, if you want to end adult homelessness, you first have to end youth homelessness, because we know that 30 to 50% of the adults on the streets in homelessness were homeless as young people, as adolescents, as young adults. I just love our commitment to, and this fits with homelessness, young people who identify as LGBTQ and youth of color, who the disproportionality is just so off the charts about how young people in those demographics are much more likely to experience both foster care and homelessness. So I'm proud of the work, again, that the current staff have done and continue to do in making sure that young people experiencing homelessness get the same opportunities that we want to give to young people experiencing foster care.
When I think about all the young people who are in foster care, when I think about all the reps who I work with, all the young people who have come through, your vision has really impacted us in a major way, in a very positive way. And so now that we're 20 years down the road and we're hitting this 20th anniversary, I have to ask you, what does 20 years of Mockingbird mean to you?
Well, as you might guess, it means everything to me. I'm so proud to have been part of it and to still be part of it. I'm proud of you and the thousands of young people like you that have come up through the Mockingbird Family Model, the Youth Network, have played so many different kinds of roles. There's a funny story that I like to tell. It's a true story. It was right at the beginning, and we had exhausted most of our funds. There was not even, other than this pie-in-the-sky proposal that I wrote to Senator Patty Murray, there was really nothing even in the pipeline. And we had probably 2 pay periods left. And so it still gets me. I started crying. They were crying. We just felt so much like we were onto something by giving young people a different seat at the table, that instead of being somebody's client, they were young leaders. We went to bed. I woke up in the morning and I already had a voicemail when I checked. By the grace of God, quite frankly, it was Senator Patty Murray telling me that the proposal that I had written for $375,000 had been awarded, that we would be getting that money. I just think sometimes when we're here to celebrate such a remarkable achievement of where this organization is today, a lot of people might find it interesting and don't really know just how close we came to it not being here. But again, every time I see Senator Murray, she remembers. And so I just thought I'd share that story.
I love it.
So there's lots to be proud of, but really the staff and the volunteers and the board members, the donors who from the beginning start contributing and continue to this day to support this remarkable organization. And to the current staff, I want to say thank you. The current staff and board members and volunteers, I want to say thank you for continuing this vision and this legacy, I think we have 20 years of proof that, including young people who have experienced foster care and or homelessness, including them in the process, results in better public policy, more effective programs, and certainly a more engaged and compassionate community.
As a young person who grew up in this city, I never got to see the side that was in poverty. I never got to see the side that wasn't foster care and that wasn't systems entrenched until I became a part of the Mockingbird family model. That is one experience, but that is one experience of many. I definitely feel like I've been put in a leadership position many times and had an opportunity to give back, but that's what it means to me. It means 20 years of leadership, 20 years of youth voice, 20 years of truth, 20 years of advocacy, 20 years of healing, 20 years of changing systems for the better. And I honestly cannot wait to see what 20 more years brings.
Wow. It's amazing to see how far we've come in 20 years. And I just want to echo what Deonate said. 20 years of making a difference. The Mockingbird Society has left an impact on many youth lives. And I'm so glad I get to be a part of that journey as we continue to work of the Mockingbird Society. In a moment, we'll begin the Q&A. We'll answer as many questions as we are able to. But first, I'd like to turn it over to Jim to say a few words.
Thank you very much, Esther, and thank you everyone for joining us here this evening. And welcome to a very exciting program that we have for you, and the video was just tremendous. And thank you for this opportunity. I'm grateful that we have the opportunity to celebrate 20 years of the Mockingbird Society. I'm Jim Theofelis, the proud founder of the Mockingbird Society, with the fabulous Deonate Cruz, and we welcome and thank you for joining us tonight. And again, I'm so proud of all the work to support young people and families over 20 years, and so grateful to each of you and the many folks who participated in Mockingbird to get us this far. You know, this is a powerful moment in time for our world, for our nation, and for the Mockingbird Society. It truly is remarkable for us all to be gathered here celebrating 20 years of innovation and achievement. I want to thank each of you, and I want to recognize the many different roles you have played in getting us here. This has been a community effort. And you know, back in 2000, when we started this, not everyone believed we could actually build and sustain a new organization centered in youth voice and leadership with a mission of transformation of the child welfare system. But some of you did believe, and you responded early with cheerleading, with funding, serving as board members and volunteers, and more cheerleading. I think of Lori Lippold, Janice Avery, Casey Trupin, Laura Workman, Kelly and Steve Nolan Schaefer, Makiba Green, Zenobia Hetherington, and so many more. And I'm going to take the time to say names because you got us here. The founding board members, Dr. Alan Rothblatt, Larry Krim, Steve Hardy, and Alita Hoyt, who took my phone call and didn't hang up, even though I was asking them to join. And new members to the board who joined along the way, remarkable people. Elise Chayat, Shannon Doolittle, Kim Justice, Lisa Machette, Jana Hyde, Jim Hahn, Stephen Heward, Kelly Werner King, Amy Poley, so many others. And mostly the remarkable professionals, the staff, the young professionals who've come through Mockingbird as staff, did amazing work here, and are now spread out through the community in other organizations. Shannon Borello and Valerie Douglas, some of the first people to come on board. Roz Gann, DeGail Cooper, our first Mockingbird family hub home with her wife, Lisa. Brian Lawrence, Aaron Hathaway, Aaron Shea McCann, Dr. Wanda Hackett, Cecily Ferguson, I could go on, Paula Cavero, Fred Kingston, Ashley Barnes-Cock, and of course, Lauren Frederick, who I will always be indebted to. But I also have to say here, special shout out to all the families who participated in the hub homes and the constellation, including Mary and Gerald Donaldson, who I grew to love and appreciate very much. I also want to thank the philanthropic community that stepped up and invested in an early idea. Connie Balmer, Sherry Schultz, Tricia Rakes, Sonia Campion, so many, the Medina Foundation, Casey Family Programs, something near to my heart, the Tooth Fairy Fund, and of course, Senator Patty Murray and so many others. Our legislative champions who helped move so many of these issues forward, who were willing to do something different in their seats of power and actually listen to young people. Representative Ruth Kagi, what a champion. Representatives Tim Ormsby, Frank Chop, Ross Hunter, Tana Sand, so many others, Senator Billig, Carlisle, Darneal, and Hargrove. We couldn't do this without all of you. And perhaps the greatest champion of all, I call her the Mama Bear for homeless youth, First Lady Trudy Inslee. She's been there all along. I'm especially grateful to the many young people for sharing their story, their wisdom, and courage, which has actually shifted the legislative mindset from those kids to, as James Baldwin tells us, for these are all our children. These young people are the heart and soul of the Mockingbird Society and have participated as leaders and employees. And as Deonate says, making change not only for themselves, but for the 5-year-old coming behind. If I didn't say your name, please know you were part of this journey and the success of elevating youth voice and making the Mockingbird family model a global success. And here we find ourselves celebrating the past 20 years of the Mockingbird Society. But most importantly, tonight, we are getting prepared for the next 20 years. This type of innovation does not happen on its own. It takes all of us. We need to fight hard and make sure that young people are at the table instead of on the table. We have 20 years of proof that it works and makes us a better community when we listen and build programs and policies and systems based on the lived experience of the children, youth, and families who actually receive the services. That 5-year-old we've been talking about going into their first foster home, the young person going into the 10th or 15th, the young person of color going into yet another home with a culture that is not their own, the transgender young person going into a placement or a group home that does not celebrate, let alone even acknowledge their identity. The foster family being fully supported by a dedicated Mockingbird Hub Home family like the Donaldsons and so many others, and that entire constellation. Tonight, my friends, is our opportunity to support the current incredible staff and board of directors led by Executive Director Annie Blackledge and Board Chair Tasha West Baker to continue this journey. And I hope you will join me in making a financial donation toward this journey tonight. You've already heard, and I'm so proud and appreciative of the Schultz Family Foundation, making sure that all gifts, $250 and above, are matched dollar for dollar up to $25,000. Your $250 becomes $500. Your $1,000 becomes $2,000. But in the spirit of the Mockingbird way, if what you can give is $5 or $50 or $100, we are grateful. But I hope you will push yourself for what we all know is a proven and great cause. You see it there. You can donate at the website or by texting GIVE to that number. I again want to thank each of you for your ongoing support, and for those of you as we all strive to make it in this crazy world. I know for me, I try to live by the motto, be half the person your dog thinks you are. With that, I'm happy to ask Esther to help us with the next portion. And I thank Deonate for once again representing the incredible young people who make up the Mockingbird community. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jim. Okay, we have our first question here from our text line. And the first question is, what has Mockingbird taught you about what is possible? We are in such a transformational moment. What would you want the world to know that is a secret Mockingbird has unlocked?
Go ahead, Deonate. We want to hear your voice, baby.
Thank you, Jim. So glad to be here. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Thank you for supporting the Mockingbird Society during this time. The secret that Mockingbird has unlocked for me is to never undersell the value of experience, no matter what it is. The people who are always closest to the impact, the people who are closest to the work are going to be the people who know how to do best. The other thing I'll say is that you couple that with this idea of coming back. We have some legacy issues that we fought time and time again. And oftentimes when we were told no, we felt a little discouraged. But also when we came back that much stronger. And so when we were told no the first time with extended foster care, if we didn't come back the next year and the next year after that and the next year after that, we would have never had an opportunity to give young people aging out of foster care a place to be able to stay, a place to be able to have something to eat, a family to continue to love them in an environment that they're familiar with. So that's what I'll say. What about you, Jim?
Well, I would say yes. For me, I think what we all learn, first of all, I think what we want to do at Mockingbird back then and now is we wanted to do our work with young people and families, not to them. And I think we have a system that still does the work to people instead of with them way too often. But the other theme that comes to mind is trust. It was, I mean, when we first started it, I think there was all the anxiety I heard about it won't work was really about, do you trust young people to take that much responsibility, especially those young people? And I think the answer was yes, we trust them. And we want funders to trust us, and we want to trust the young people. And we want legislators to trust our ideas. So I think that was something that was confirmed for me is put your trust in the folks who have the most to gain and the most to lose. And that is, again, the children, youth, and families in this system. I want to say thank you to some of the chats that I'm seeing, but if you know me, I often joke, I'm still proud to work in Etch-a-Sketch. So I'm not touching the laptop or the chat, but I'm grateful for the comments that are coming through.
All right, thank you guys. So our next question is from the text line. What opportunities do you see for youth voice now as compared to 20 years ago?
Oh, I'll just say real quickly and then give it back to Deonate. Well, when we started, people were actually uncomfortable when I brought young people to meetings, as particularly meetings on any level. I was just so committed to, we should not be at these tables. And there were two things I said: I'm not going to be at the table anymore unless young people are there. And I'm not going to be at the table unless young people are being compensated. And that's more than a piece of pizza. So I think people were really uncomfortable and didn't know what to do. And should I say that in front of this young person? And now if you look around, if you're at a meeting and there isn't someone with lived experience at that table, it's uncommon and should not be tolerated. But I think that's the biggest thing that I've noticed. How about you, Deonate?
Yeah, I would say the same thing. I would say that this impact of having youth voice at the table and it being invited transcends just the work that we're doing in the social service sector. I think when we look at some of the programs that partner with young people, some of the funders that are funding some of these programs, they've been able to give young people the opportunity to sit at those tables as well and partake in those experiences as well. So this has had really a trickle down effect. And so when we talk about young people really being present, like, yeah, the culture has changed. Jim said it earlier, you know, we had a culture of, we want to, you know, do something for those young people instead of something alongside those young people. Now, every time I go to Youth Advocacy Day in Olympia, we got the legislators coming to talk to us. We had to be able to go in there and be able to talk to them once upon a time, but now they want to hear our voice. When we're over, you know, in the 2100 building, the programs over there that are serving young people, they're like, we need the young people's feedback. We need to know how we're doing, how we're performing, and in other areas as well. And so this whole idea of having young people present, it's really transcended more than the social service sector.
Thank you guys for answering that question. The next question in the text line is, tell us what you're doing now and how Mockingbird has helped you on your career journey.
That's you, Deonate.
Oh, you don't want to tell them about your whole career? I'm working with Jim still. I'm over at Away Home Washington, where we're working to end youth and young adult homelessness in 4 counties in Washington state. We're also partnering with the Mockingbird Society to get some of that work done, because we also recognize the power of youth voice. And so I work in the communications department. A big part of the work that I do is community engagement. Also, I work editing, creating, and distributing our communication materials out to the community that we work with, but also the broader communities, and educating people, kind of telling the story about some of the work that we're doing. Mockingbird has helped me, one, because it's given me my North Star. I'm always chasing Jim. We used to have a little joke that I used to try to put him out of his job and that I would be going for the ED seat. But truthfully, like, I admire Jim. I follow Jim everywhere. I believe in everything that he does wholeheartedly. I've seen the impact of his vision, and I stand on that. His legacy is something tremendous that has impacted so many youth and young adults. And so when there's an opportunity to work underneath him again, I jumped at that. Also, we have such an amazing team there. And so Mockingbird has taught me to use my voice to advocate, using my experiences, what it means to be able to advocate on behalf of the young people, what the impact is and what's truly at stake, and also what you can do when you actually commit to the work. And so I'm proud to be doing this work and continuing to do this work. And Mockingbird has definitely given me my first real experience in doing this.
Well, I really enjoy being with you and working alongside you, and absolutely adore you. And just want to say again, thank you to so many of the young people who have come through Mockingbird and then continued to struggle wherever they're at. Every time I'm in Olympia, I meet some young person who is a legislative aide, who wants to be a senator, and talk about it all started when they came to the Youth Summit or Youth Advocacy Day. So I still want to say one more time, folks, let's do what we can to support this organization tonight. We're not in a place where we can have the big luncheon. This is what we've got. I'm so impressed with the staff who've just shown so much creativity by putting this series together. Esther, you are absolutely amazing as a facilitator. Thank you so much. But let's do our part and write those checks or send that text with our donation and support this remarkable team and organization. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim, for the feedback. And thank you, Deonate. Thank you to you both for taking the time to answer these questions. Our last question for tonight is for the both of you. What is your favorite Mockingbird memory?
That's a great question. And it's not that it's that there are so many, quite frankly. And that's really, really true. If you just go through the photo album, you can see so many different memories. A fun one is we moved into this 2100 building, which is a phenomenal complex of different organizations and nonprofits who have aligned missions. But we, along with Treehouse and the YMCA, were the first 3 organizations. And we actually moved in when the construction company was still building our space, which at that time was upstairs. And Senator Patty Murray came and had the big old check for $375,000. It was a nice press event. So there were many, and certainly so many with young people, but that one comes to mind.
I'm going to cheat a little bit. I'm going to answer it broadly. I'm going to say anytime that we had the opportunity to build community. So whether we were going out and meeting with some of the Mockingbird family program families and getting them on board, whether we were in Japan, getting them on board, whether we're around the country, meeting with other organizations doing the same work, but especially being here at home, getting to meet with my peers, getting to, you know, really establish that culture and realize that my experience wasn't really any different than the experience of all these other youth and young adults. And so it made me really feel comfortable. Also, there was times where we were mailing out papers. I don't know if you remember those mailing days, Jim. We'd have to mail out hundreds of papers by hand and fold them. And we had so many different people come from the community. They would come and share a meal with us. Oftentimes they would help us cook the meal or even provide the meal sometimes. And we would just sit down and we would fold these papers. We'd lick these envelopes and we'd put these labels on them, and then we'd sort them and we'd send them out. And those articles that were in there were written by us. They were our story. And so it was an opportunity to really educate the community. And I was amazed how many people would buy into it. We would get 20,000 subscriptions every month. And so that meant that 20,000 people were building community with us every month, learning about our experiences. And so those are some of my favorite memories.
Yeah, I just got to say, that's a great memory, the Mockingbird times. And I can remember going home with ink all over me from all of that folding and everything. But, you know, at the very beginning, another great partner we had early on was Real Change. And we were always been part of their newspaper. But when we first started, we didn't have a big enough circulation, so we could not have our own paper. So I would go down there, I would pay some of the folks around there, some of their vendors and homeless folks, to help me carry the 500 copies out to my truck. I would have to take our portion out of it, stack those up, and then give them back their Real Change, because they didn't want me throwing them away, because they would, you know, that people would have that instead of buying the copy. So it's been a lot of hard work, and I know it is today, even now, for the staff and board, volunteers, and young people. But I think another great memory that still is alive is the commitment this community has to this mission. Yeah, fun.
Thank you to you both once again for answering the questions. And that's all the time we have this evening. If we weren't able to get your question tonight, we will be following up with each of you in the days to come, so we'll keep you posted. I want to thank all of you for being here with us tonight. I'll see you on our next date, October 15th, for part 2 of Through the Lens of Lived Experience, where we'll discuss the opportunities Mockingbird family creates for culturally relevant foster care in communities around the globe. Together, we're capturing what's possible for young people and families. And young people who are on the call, listen to me clear as I say this. We will change the system for the better. Don't give up. Don't forget that you have a purpose and that your experience will pay off, and that we will change the system for the better, for good. Good night, everyone, and thank you for tuning in.